Hello and welcome to CultureCast. In this episode, we will be talking about the book Rigoberta Menchú. My name's Ryan.
I'm Sam.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Evan.
And I'm Dana. Before we delve into the details of the book, let's take a minute to talk about the background. Rigoberta Menchú is a testimonial and Nobel Peace Prize winner recounting the tale of a poor Guatemalan woman who is repressed by the forceful militia.
So what you're saying is that this isn't a happy-go-lucky tale.
Far from it. But in saying that, I think that this is something that nobody likes hearing about, but all the same, people need to hear about it. The story recounts a social injustice that Rigoberta and her entire community endures, without many people out there doing much about it.
The autobiography is written through a series of interviews by Venezuelan Elizabeth Burgos de Bray. While the interviews conducted over a few days back in 1982 were held in Spanish, the tale became a hit and has flourished in many different languages since publishing. The book is written by Elizabeth Burgos de Bray.
Wait, I thought Menchú was the author.
Well, there's some discrepancy to that. She edited the interviews of Rigoberta Menchú and then compiled a text out of it. However, the book is still considered an interview of Menchú. The reader can truly hear her cry for help as they read her words. If it had been a story told by someone else, then Menchú's story would not have seemed as important. The form of this book underscores the content. Menchú and her family led a movement for the Quiché community against the oppressor Ladinos to end discrimination. The Ladino oppression was a common problem in Guatemala at the time, and the courage and resilience of Menchú showed that helped start a cultural revolution in Central America.
So this was just a problem just during the life of Menchú and her family?
No, far from it. Before we go into details, we have a clip to show you from the documentary When the Mountains Tremble.
Members of the Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There can be no question the national security of all the Americas is at stake in Central America. If we cannot defend ourselves there, the safety of our homeland would be put in jeopardy. What I'm asking for is prompt congressional approval for the full reprogramming of funds for key current economic and security programs so that the people of Central America can hold the line against externally supported aggression.
The United States has been totally open with us, showing their good intentions and willingness to cooperate in solving our problems. And we're very grateful for any aid they give us which will help the people of Guatemala. And better yet, if that aid comes in helicopters.
First, we should maintain the great friendship that we have with the United States, because you know better than I how the United States helps the whole world. And, of course, armies need weapons.
Han recibido acá el entrenamiento de mejor calidad que se les ha podido presentar. Ahorita ustedes son el producto del esfuerzo personal de los instructores, tanto de la escuela como instructores invitados y instructores ajenos que les han presentado este entrenamiento.
Yo puedo ayudarles en mucho de infantería, de fuerzas especiales también, y muchos objetos de lo militar. De vez en cuando ellos me preguntan experiencias de Vietnam y les explico todo lo que ha pasado en Vietnam y ellos están muy atentos en las experiencias que tengo yo.
De frente. ¡Marchen!
Now, in the case of Guatemala, it seems to me that it's important that the government have sufficient police and military force to maintain the political structures of the country. If Guatemala came unstuck, it would have serious economic repercussions throughout Central America.
Decades before Menchú even was born, and up to that point in her life, migrant working was a constant for her Indian population. The NSA actually discovered years later that the CIA was immediately involved in equipping and training the very people responsible for over 200,000 deaths during the country's civil war.
Wait, is that actually true?
Sadly, yes, and even when the U.S. heard about these mass killings, they did little to nothing to intervene with these oppressors.
Moving forward, Rigoberta Menchú is characterized as a testimonial.
You may have never heard of a testimonial prior to reading the text, but it is a story in which one speaker presents the history of an entire community or group as if it were their own. In this case, Rigoberta recounts events of her life.
Wow, so is this like a memoir of some sort?
Not necessarily. These events relate to the broader population of Guatemalan Indians and their struggles during the Guatemalan Civil War. Rigoberta grew up during a time of unrest, which ultimately inspired her to create peace between the Ladinos and her fellow Indians.
The struggle with the higher authority could be compared to the Native Americans in the United States, as well as the persecution of the Jews in Germany.
The text opens with Rigoberta describing traditions of her people. She tells the audience about various duties and respects her people pay to pregnant women. She recounts when her mother told her about the importance of talking to an unborn baby from the moment of conception.
Rigoberta also told of the importance of making sure pregnant women are fed, since they have 2 mouths. She remembers when her mother gave away some of her food in order to ensure a future mother consumed enough nutrients for herself and her baby.
Isn't there another strange tradition where the mother and newborn baby are hidden away for 8 days?
Yes, this is true. Once a child is born, the mother and baby retreat away from other family members. The mother's home and clothes are washed, and 4 candles are placed on each of the 4 corners of the bed.
What do the candles represent?
The candles represent the baby's new home. The bedposts signify the 4 corners of the house where the baby will grow up. Another thing you may find surprising is that the baby's hands and feet are bound together.
Are you sure? It seems like they're trying to strangle the newborn.
Please, don't be silly. Their intention is not to hurt the baby. The baby's limbs are tied together to signify that their hands and feet are sacred. They must only be used for what nature and God has intended. This is an important custom of Rigoberta's culture.
A tradition that we embrace as Americans is the baptizing of a newborn baby. Guatemalan Indians also baptize their children into their faith and community.
However, a difference in their ceremony is that the baby is given a necklace with tobacco and garlic. The tobacco and garlic are believed to ward off evils and protect the child.
That kind of reminds me of people using garlic to keep vampires and witches away many years ago.
Exactly. Both populations believe that garlic keeps away evils.
A central motif seen throughout the novel is one of community. At the start of the book, Rigoberta tells the reader about traditions and way of life of her community. She considers her community as the Indians living with her mother and father in the Altiplano region of Guatemala.
As the story unfolds, Rigoberta extends her definition of community to include all persecuted Indians. Later on, Rigoberta considers all those who oppose the Ladinos and work to liberate her people a part of her community.
The importance of storytelling is also prevalent throughout the text. The text itself is Rigoberta recounting the story of her people to the author, Burgos de Bray. Interwoven through the story, Rigoberta tells her story from her parents' childhood.
Oftentimes, elders tell stories of a couple when they get married. Rigoberta also tells of her father's childhood. Her father was very involved with Catholicism and was a choir boy. Rigoberta worked as kind of like a missionary for spreading the Catholic religion in her community. Every so often, priests came to deliver materials, and Rigoberta worked to teach her community about Catholic faith.
Okay, now let's go over the themes. There are 3 main themes that I noticed throughout the book. Anyone know?
I know one. A common theme I noticed throughout the book is virtue of hard work. At the young age of 8 years old, Rigoberta is doing manual labor in the coffee fields. After that, she becomes a maid and does chores for the landowners. Even when she is working for the CUC, she maintains a high level of work.
That's one of them. Anybody else know the other two?
Another theme throughout the story is the power of words. Instead of fighting with violence, Rigoberta learns that she can fight using her words and stories. When Rigoberta has her mind set on change for her people, she knows she is going to have to learn Spanish to communicate with a larger audience.
Cool, good job. I'll stop you there and say the last theme. The last theme is tradition. Tradition is very significant for the Quiche Indians, as tradition reoccurs frequently throughout the book, whether it be the tradition of childbirth or marriage. A big reason why the Quiche Indians are fighting is to preserve their tradition.
Interesting. Now let's discuss things that were symbolic. The first symbol I noticed was Candelaria. Candelaria, also a maid in the landowner's house, represents rebellion. She shows Rigoberta small ways to rebel against the landowner. Candelaria rebels by neglecting certain chores and talking back to the mistress. Some of this rebelliousness rubs off on Rigoberta and stays with her throughout the book.
The last big symbol I observed in the story was Rigoberta's skirt. When Rigoberta rips the skirt in half that the mistress gave her, it symbolizes change and that she will no longer follow tradition and be submissive. The ripping of the skirt is Rigoberta changing her ways towards a more assertive and aggressive path to fight for her people.
Also, the lorry which the Altiplano Indians take to the finca is a key symbol. The closed sides and tarp covering the lorry create a dark environment for the travelers. The passengers are unable to see their surroundings and have no idea where they are headed.
The blackness inside the lorry represents the unknown. I would definitely not want to live in the dark for weeks. Imagine if you were afraid of the dark.
The Altiplano people never knew what awaited them once they arrived at the finca. This included their work environment or when or if their family members would be separated from them. For instance, Rigoberta worked on a finca with her mother and a few of her brothers. However, her father worked on another finca.
Only after her brother's death on the finca does Rigoberta see the light on her way home. Rigoberta, her mother, her siblings, and her neighbors ride a bus home after they were banished from the finca for missing work due to her brother's death.
On the bus ride home, Rigoberta begins to see the surroundings for the first time and the light. This light motivates her to take control and teach others how to defend them.
The old woman also serves as an important symbol in the text. The old woman was the first to kill in the name of revolution and fighting for what she believed in.
Who would have thought?
She symbolizes the ancestors that the younger generation looks to for guidance. Her act of defiance was seen as a permission to kill in the name of justice and the preservation of rights. Just as we look up to our elders and grandparents today, so did the Guatemalan Indians.
This serves as an important lesson that although the old may appear to be meek and feeble, they are strong and powerful and can fight back.
Hearing the struggles of Rigoberta Menchú from her own words is truly stunning. Although the narrator speaks in two similar points of view, she uses plural first person and first person. It changes with what Menchú is describing. When she is describing events that she experienced, she uses first person. However, she did not witness all the events she described. Thus, she used the plural first person to represent her whole community. Over and over again, she reminds the audience that this is a tale of not her, but of her people. And it is for that reason why she switches from a constant I and we.
That's a good point. I think throughout the story it seems like she is trying to get the point across that this isn't just her story. She isn't more or less involved with the oppressors when she was growing up in Guatemala, but this was a normalcy of life for all in her community.
Wow, that's deep. Let's stay on pace here and talk about the tone of the story. This story has a sentimental tone to it. Rigoberta talks about the cruel events she had to endure, all of which with deep emotional meaning.
Let's discuss some narrative techniques. The narrator speaks in both plural first person and first person. It fluctuates based on the events being described.
How so?
The narrative remains with Rigoberta, although she describes events she could not witness with panoramic detail. As a narrator, Rigoberta represents a highly subjective, limited view of the other characters.
What about the speech and dialogue of I, Rigoberta?
Rigoberta is objectively personal, addressing the reader openly in her own voice. She uses direct suggestion to manipulate the reader's emotions by interpreting events for the reader. Throughout the book, she constantly talks about what she witnessed or thought from her perspective, leaving the story one-sided.
Now let's talk about Rigoberta as a character. Rigoberta, an Indian, pushes herself and others past being a victim to empowerment. A survivor, Rigoberta begins as an obedient daughter, but she gradually gains a strong, militant sense of her individual rights and the rights of her people.
What about her relationship with her father?
Though Rigoberta's alliance to her elders, and to her father in particular, is fierce and unyielding, she wants to change the future for herself and others like her. Though she is repeatedly reminded during tribal ceremonies that all Indians must succumb to a life of hard work, misery, and suffering, she refuses to accept this way of life.
How does she react to her brother's death? I'm sure it was hard for her to deal with, along with the struggle of everyday life.
When her brother Nicholas dies of malnutrition at the finca, Rigoberta grows angry. Over time, this anger motivates her. As many other members of her family, including her mother and her father who were murdered, Rigoberta grows increasingly militant.
She witnesses violence as a means to an end, yet she stops short of joining the Guatemalan guerrillas.
Later, Rigoberta applies her work ethic to political change, realizing that patience is a key component to any worthwhile effort. Though early attempts to learn Spanish fail, she doesn't give up on her dream and eventually succeeds in learning the language.
Rigoberta is both traditional and yet radically modern. While she carefully preserves the ancient ways of her people by chronicling birth and death ceremonies in detail, for example, she also renounces motherhood and marriage so she can follow her father's footsteps.
That's quite a radical move for a woman in any society, but especially in one as traditional and old-fashioned as that of the Quiche Indians.
So before we head out today, let's take time to talk about the credibility of the story. I think it's kind of a big deal that she contradicts herself at times, and that some of the stuff she says that happens or to her doesn't even happen at all.
Yeah, what's that about? In class, we read those articles almost discrediting not all but most of her story. She tells tales of things that never even happened to her family.
But does it even matter? Over and over again, she talks about how this isn't a story of her, but of all her people. And I'm not sure if she hadn't said the things she said in regards to her family, that this story would have become as popular as it is.
Why would she lie about those things, though?
I don't really think she was lying. Whether she heard these things happen or saw it herself, to me, is irrelevant. These things happened, and it was, in my opinion, these stories that helped people around the world notice.
I think that without a doubt, as people have verified her story over the years, that some have become to think less of the issue down in Guatemala. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't exactly know, but I'm not sure we will ever be in agreement on this topic.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Tune in next time. This is Ryan.
I'm Sam.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Evan.
And I'm Dana.
Thanks for watching.